Yeah, so
I'll tell the story.
I just had a question. How did you guys meet?
That's a long story, I'll tell you. Back in the 50s, my mother and father came from Italy. Now, they didn't teach us anything about Italy, any language, couldn't speak a word of Italian because of the war. You know, they wouldn't teach us anything. Now, that was the 50s. My parents died in the 60s. My father 64, my mother 68. In 1969, my father's brother, my uncle, comes over the house, says to me, your father was supposed to go to Italy this year. You got a grandmother and grandfather there. You got to meet him. You got to go to Italy. So I said, okay, you know, I'll go to Italy. Well, I went to Italy, and I had aunts, uncles, cousins, nieces, nephews. I mean, I couldn't believe the relatives I had that never knew. They never said nothing to me. Well, we lived, me and my aunt and my uncle, we lived at my aunt's house in Italy. And the next door was this nice looking young girl. Very nice very young and very good looking. My uncle says to me, you know, she comes over and she asks about you. You know, where do you live? Do you work? You got a job? You got a house? All different questions she's asking. So when he asked me that, when he told me that, you know, I thought about it and I got to know her well. So I went to buy a ring. It cost me 250 lire. Now the lire was 50 years ago, the lire, and today is the euro. Well, the euro is worth a lot more money, but 250 lire, that was 25 cents. A plastic ring I bought, a plastic ring. So now I go home from the city and I see her next door, and I go over there and I take the ring and I put it on her wedding finger. And of course, we couldn't talk to each other. She spoke Italian and I spoke English, so we couldn't even talk. So she went into her mother. Her mother comes running over my aunt's house, wants to know what the hell's going on. That means marriage. So my aunt calls me inside, says, listen, you gave her that ring. You know, that means marriage, you know. Are you willing to marry her? I said, yes. So we decided to get married. Of course, I bought her a nice ring. And 2 weeks later, we got married. Couldn't talk to each other, but we got married. And now it's 50 years. 50 years. And this is my lovely bride of 50 years.
That's a long time.
Yeah, it's a long time. It seems like yesterday. But marriage was beautiful. It's got to be when you marry 50 years. So there's a lot of other stories, you know, that we had to get along with because we couldn't talk to each other. It took her 5 or 6 months for her to come to America. You know, I got married, and a couple of days later, I was on a train going to Rome to get on an airplane to come back here. I mean, she went to the airport, but she couldn't come to America because you had to have a passport, Italian, American passport. You had to have paperwork from Italy, paperwork from America, you know, and it was tough to do it. Today it's even harder, but it was tough then too. So she comes, and she was talking to me in Italian. She says to me, America. How do you say it, Marie?
Giardinots.
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 Giardinots. Sounds like jelly donuts, doesn't it? So I go buy jelly donuts, I bring them home. You know, she looks at me like, what the heck are those? She says to me again, in Italian, America.
Giardinots.
Giardinots. That's how you say it, Giardinots.
Giardinots. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Giardinots.
Yes, I know. So I went and bought Italian pastries. Come home, nothing. Couldn't understand why she didn't, you know, she just wouldn't do it. Well, a couple of days later, my uncle, the one that went to Italy with me, he comes over the house and I ask him, I says, she keeps asking this, Giardinots. She keeps asking her for Giardinots. I says, what the hell are those? Well, he talks to her. I says, well, you know, you're asking her Giardinots. He says, yeah. So he says to me, Giardinots in Italian means honeymoon. She wanted to go on a honeymoon, and I was buying her jelly donuts. So we went on a honeymoon afterwards. Went to Montreal for a couple of weeks. So, but that's how we got married, and that's how we went on a honeymoon and everything. Now she speaks good English. I mean,
Okay.
okay, everything is okay. She
Yeah,
does.
we had a pretty good marriage.
Yeah,
We had ups and downs, of course.
yeah. And you speak good English.
Oh, yeah.
50 years later.
50 years later.
50 years
It's-
later.
Yeah.
It didn't take that long to speak good English, you know. Christ, 6 months or so, she could speak pretty good English. I taught her how to speak English. The only thing bad about it, she didn't teach me to speak some
I
Italian.
speak Italian, yeah.
I know a few words, but not a whole conversation.
Hmm.
So that's the story how we got married.
Nice.
Okay.
That was an awesome story. Thanks for sharing that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Now that it's 50 years, I bought her another plastic ring. It cost me $6. I mean, $6 it cost me here.
Okay, you gotta put it on this one, right? Yeah. What in the world?
So I got her a nice big ring for $6 for our wedding.
That thing's got to be
50
70
years.
carats, easy.
Yeah.